Oh, excuse me. Hello, and welcome back to the Film Custodian Show. I am the Film Custodian, Star Wars Andor, about Cassian Andor. This show was created by Tony Gilroy, who actually came in and basically saved Rogue One, famously during production, when production started to go haywire over there. He took over directing duties, and I believe wrote a whole bunch more scenes. I think because of him, he's the reason why we have the scene with Darth Vader at the end, where he's going down the hallway, killing all the troopers. It's a great scene. It's a horrifying scene. Anytime you add that horror element with Vader, it's always great. And that's why I really liked, what I liked a lot about Obi-Wan Kenobi, was there was a lot of that. A lot of Vader, choking people and just using his raw force power. It's great. Okay, so he decided to revisit the character of Cassian Andor and create the Andor TV show. And also his brother Dan Gilroy is in there as well. Tony Gilroy wrote the Bourne trilogy. And then Dan Gilroy was the one that did Nightcrawler. So I believe it was Dan Gilroy that did Nightcrawler. Well, one of those two. Anyway, the Gilroy brothers. So they're mostly responsible for this Andor show. They pretty much wrote all the episodes, and but I don't think they were able to direct any of them because of scheduling conflicts and whatnot. So anyway, Diego Luga is back as Cassian Andor. So let's just do a little bit of an overview. So the first 4 episodes are out now. The first 3 were released all at once. I think they could have just been released as one beginning, middle, and end, 90-minute pilot episode, and then just do episode 4 as episode 2. But instead, they're released as episode 1, 2, and 3, and then, and which makes a lot of sense, because 1, 2, and 3 really do tell a complete story. It's the beginning of everything, obviously, but they're setting up the world, they're setting up the tone. They're setting up the character of Cassian Andor. There's some flashbacks to when he was a kid on this planet that has been just decimated by the Empire. So I believe it was the Empire anyway. I don't know. It's kind of sketchy exactly when this is timeline-wise, because I know they changed his age a little bit. So I guess he's supposed to be like 21 right now in the show, but he's played by Diego Luna, who's 42 in real life. He talks about, in episode 4 of Andor, he talks about being at the Battle of Mimban, which, if you remember, if you go back to the Solo movie, you see Solo fighting at Mimban. Basically, he's in the trenches. It's very reminiscent of World War I. You got trench warfare going on. You got all the soldiers all grungy and whatnot. And I really liked Solo, and that was one of my favorite scenes from Solo, actually. So I guess Cassian was there somewhere. So I guess he was part of the Empire at one point, or maybe he was fighting for, on Mimban's side. I'm not really sure yet. But but he says he was 16 at that time. And, if that takes place, I believe 5 years after episode 3 is when Solo happens, and this is 5 years before episode 4. There's 19 years between 3 and 4, episode 3 and episode 4. So this show takes place 5 years before episode 4. It's the same time that Rebels TV show takes place, 5 years before episode 4. And so I know that they kind of messed around with his age a little bit, the character of Andor. The actor is in his early 40s, but I think he's supposed to be in his early 20s. I'm not entirely sure. It's kind of a minor detail. I don't think it really matters in the grander scheme of things all that much. And he looks like he could be younger, so hey, whatever, minor details. The show is different than anything we've seen before, especially tonally. I'm not going to say it's a lot darker. It's just a lot more serious, a lot more grounded in real life. The look of the whole thing, the sets and everything, it looks like classic Star Wars. It looks like the original trilogy. Pretty much everybody has some kind of British accent, which also helps, because most people in the original trilogy had British accents, especially in episode 4 when you get to the Empire and the characters are more introduced in episode 4, and Coruscant is in episode 4. Everyone has a British accent. And so it helps. It makes it look and sound and feel a lot more like the real trilogy. But anyway, so Andor is different than Obi-Wan. It's different than The Mandalorian. If The Mandalorian is your Saturday morning serial, action series where it's just a lot of action and they don't get too deep on character and too deep on plot, It's just a very simple story, really simple, stupid. And that's great. That's good because it makes for a lot of fun action, a lot of fun Star Wars with The Mandalorian and Grogu. And I really like the first 2 seasons a lot. And then you get Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is the sequel to Episode 3, and it's pretty good. I have some issues with it. Some of the writing isn't the best. Some of the sequences that happened could have happened a little bit better. But yeah, all in all, I really liked it. I thought it was good. I thought Ewan McGregor did a fantastic job of playing, a broken man who has to basically become hopeful again and sort of deal with his past issues and past demons and literally confront them. But then you get Andor, and now he's basically just starts off as a rebel without a cause. So from the very beginning, it starts off very neo-noirish. Everything is dark and dimly lit. It looks a lot like Blade Runner, actually, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The first place he goes is basically a brothel, right? Like there's, you got the women working in there. One comes over and it's like, hey, are you alone? He's like, yeah, it's just me. And then you got the 2 guys over there kind of bothering him, and Andor's looking for his sister. Long story short, he leaves the brothel, goes off. The 2 guys, the 2 security officers, which they come from, they call it like a corporate town because the whole place is sort of run by this giant corporation. There's no imperial presence, which I thought was really cool. It's just focusing on this is a corporation. They sort of still have jurisdiction. They sort of deal with things, and they really don't want the Empire involved. Like, get out of here. We're dealing with this internally, and we don't want the Imperial presence, because as soon as that happens, now everybody loses, right? And that's great because it also makes the Empire have some gravitas again, has some threat that there really are bad guys. You don't want to mess with them, and because they could have just opened up with. Replace the security guards with Imperial guards, or have stormtroopers walk around, and it's like, oh, okay, they're just kind of there as usual, not really much of a threat. The stormtroopers aren't going to hit anything anyway, right? So the security guards follow Andor out into an alleyway. They try to shake him down. One thing leads to another. Both security guards are dead, and now Andor is on the run. And basically that's the story, that's the plot of Episode 1, 2, and 3. Until ultimately he meets the Skarsgård character, which is basically, like, hey, don't you want to fight these bastards, like, for real? And which is great. Yeah, we have some swearing. They say bastard a couple times, a couple times in these episodes. And yeah, again with the tone, it is really serious. It is for adults. Kids, I don't think will be able to sit through this at all. It's not like The Mandalorian or even Obi-Wan, where they sort of have more of a mass appeal. This is going to be, like, a lot of people won't be able to watch this show, I think. A lot of people won't like it. They're going to say it's too boring, it's too, like, long and drawn out, slow burn. But I like that. I like the slow burn. That's like I was saying about House of the Dragon, or or even shows you could bring up, Mad Men or Breaking Bad or Boardwalk Empire, anything on HBO, dramas about people. They are slow burns, so to speak, where you're slowly building up the world. You're building up the characters, what they're like, what their problems are, the obstacles in the way, everything they want to accomplish. And then you're building up the world around them. You're building up this entire town that Cassian lives in. And it's great, and it's taken, dead seriously, the serious tone. And actually, another thing that's really great, everyone is a great actor. There's a lot of good acting. I mean, there was pockets in The Mandalorian and Obi-Wan Kenobi, pockets of bad acting, or just really cringy acting, where it's not good. And this, everybody's acting great. The script is good, the dialogue is good, there's no, overhyped moments. I guess a good way to compare this is, where The Mandalorian is more dramatic, more theatrical. This is, or even more cinematic. This is just very, steady as you go. Where, not to say it's not cinematic, but there's not as much theatrics. It's not like a space cowboy thing. You got little bounty hunters running around. This is just about actual people. Which means it's about minors, right? So it's like in the Star Wars world, if you're not a Jedi, you're not a Sith, you're not a bounty hunter or a mercenary or a soldier, what are you? Well, what's left? Oh, a minor. You're just a minor. But that's great, though. And everyone's just trying to kind of scratch a living, living under the oppression of the Empire. They're just kind of like, yeah, we get along, we try to mind our own business, everyone's kind of hard up for money. Cassian basically gets rare objects and tries to sell them off. You got the love triangle going between him and the female character. I can't remember the actress's name. And then the sort of the dealer that she's in business with, the guy he sells basically parts off machines. You know, they're scrappers, right? They're selling bits of machinery here and there to whoever's going to buy them. You can tell there's kind of a past relationship with Andor and this woman. So that's really cool. And then there's almost a sex scene in Star Wars, which we've never seen before, live action, or or anywhere really. Maybe in the comics, I'm not really sure. I think actually so. In the novels, Star Wars novels, or even comic books, there's more of alluding to like sexual encounters and whatnot. But speaking of novels, this really does play like a sort of an expanded universe novel, something where in a book you would take time to look at the everyday lives of people. I mean, even like Darth Bane, the Darth Bane series, he started off as a miner, right? And then eventually learned that he's got some greater power and he's force sensitive, blah blah blah, and he goes off and it's an amazing trilogy of books. Go read that. But yeah, it's great. The only thing I can really say negative at this point is that Cassian himself doesn't really carry much weight. He's just kind of a rebel without a cause, selling parts here and there. He kind of lives with his adopted mother. The planet that he lived on as a kid has basically been like blacklisted. No one knows about it. Don't go there because it was a mining incident and everything is like poison now. And then eventually, he was adopted by, scrappers who took him to the planet that he's currently on, and now he needs to get away. He needs to escape. And ends up with Skarsgård, who's like, hey man, we can fight these bastards, and I'm putting together a heist, and so yeah, come with me, I can create a heist, and all this stuff. But also, he's a really interesting character too, Skarsgård. I believe his name is Luthen. In episode 4, we go to Coruscant, which he's basically an antique dealer. So I thought that was kind of unique and cool. And who shows up to buy some antiques? It's Mon Mothma, who shows up in what looks like sort of like a vehicle that almost like a 1930s vehicle, like a car that you would find. It's clearly influenced by that, and the speeder that she's in, it looks very much like a 1930s sort of like sports kind of car, like a hot rod almost, which is very, very Star Wars. I mean, that's what the Falcon is supposed to be. The Mandalorian created his own hot rod. Like all the ships and Rebel ships are basically combobulations of other ships put together, and they're hot rods because they got to be able to compete with the Empire. And again, this is also very early on that there's pockets of rebellion, but there isn't an organized rebellion yet. Rebels, the TV show, really touched on that too, is that there's pockets of rebellion, but then towards the end of that show, there's more of, they're like, we need to be an alliance and gather together. It's the only way we're going to fight everybody. We're going to fight the Empire. And then you really see that sort of really come together in Rogue One. Where we all know Cassian Andor dies. They all sacrifice themselves to get the plans off to Princess Leia so they can eventually destroy the Death Star. So far I really do I like this show. I like the security officers. They're sort of like guys that kind of reminded me of the guys that don't get in on the action very much, and now they want to kind of get in on the action like they were missing out. But also, I can't remember the guy's name, but the security officer is like, his commander is basically like, those two guys, just bury it, make it, we don't want a parade or anything, make it kind of mundane. You can make them heroes, but make it sort of, moderate, because we don't want to make a big deal about it. We don't want to attract attention, basically. So he's basically just sweep this incident under the rug, forget about it. And then he's just like, no, we're going to find out who murdered these guys. Eventually they come in contact with the woman that Andor was talking to inside the brothel, and they get the name, and then they look him up, and they find Cassian, and now they're after him. And then the action in this is really, really good. It's well thought out. It's not every 5 seconds. Like, again, there's not a lot of action in this. There's not a lot of explosions so far, anyway. So if you're into the Star Wars where there's action all the time and everything moves quickly and you got, cameras sweeping in and out and all that stuff, this is not that. This is very steady as you go, very a direct tone. We're telling a story. We're slowly developing the plots. And it better have a really good payoff. Because they're setting everything up, I could see it having a good payoff. Again, all the characters are developing nicely. I like where everything is going. They even get down to details of Mon Mothma returns to her home and her husband is there. And she's like, what's all this? And he's like, oh, we're setting up the dinner. You know, we're going to have all these people over, you know, senators and whatnot. And she's just like, well, I didn't know about this, you know. And she looks at where everyone is seated, where they are at the table. And she's like, I don't want to sit next to these people. You know, they just voted down all these bills that I was trying to pass. And they're horrible people. And he's just like, well, you know, well, it's too late now. Everyone's coming. And then she kind of leaves. And her husband's just like, oh, everything has got to be doom and gloom all the time. You're so boring. Then Luthen gives Andor a kyber crystal, a blue kyber crystal. And I guess the significance of this was it's somehow related to the battle against the Rakatan Empire. And if any of you have played Knights of the Old Republic series 1 or 2, it's my favorite video game of all time, and it also takes place 4,000 years before Episode 1. So this, of course, involves the characters like Darth Revan, Darth Malak, Bastila. And it's really great, and how they have to find the Starforge, which is, an ancient weapon used by the Rakatan Empire, this race of aliens that is now extinct. And so that's great. That's awesome. I thought that was really cool. So yeah, they slowly keep bringing in stuff from Knights of the Old Republic. And why wouldn't you? It's the best. It's the best Star Wars story, in my opinion. So it's really interesting. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I really dig this show so far. I think it has the potential to be the best Star Wars TV show so far. Even better than The Mandalorian, maybe? I mean, it's definitely better than Boba Fett. I'll tell you that right now. It's better than Boba Fett. Maybe it'll get better than Obi-Wan. But it's sort of up there, I think, neck and neck right now with The Mandalorian. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. I'm real excited. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Please share the video. Leave a comment below. Do you like Andor? Do you not like Andor? What was your favorite Star Wars TV show so far? Yeah, let's go with that. All right. See you in the next video.